As promised, joining me now is Chris Matthews. You know him from MSNBC and Hardball. We know him right now from this New York Times best-selling book, This Country, My Life in Politics and History. I want to show people some of the great images, including the great words. It chronicles your time in Washington, Chris, your meeting with presidents, running for office, serving, as some may or may not recall, as a Capitol Hill police officer, and so many of the other events that you have had a front row seat to because of the way you lived your life and career. And I know I speak for some other people who watch MSNBC to say it's great to see you today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Ari, you're great. Thank you.
In our setup, we looked at something you know a lot about, which is that politics has always been rough and had its clashes. But it does seem like the truth problems are getting worse today. Your view?
Well, I think it comes down to numbers. You look at 35% or so who don't believe in science right now. And I held one person responsible, Donald Trump. I think he has spread the word that chaos is good. Don't trust anybody but me. It's a cult. I mean, if the numbers were 17% or something like that, we wouldn't be worried. But this is chaotic because of one person. The person who could have gone either way, they could have gone with the science or not, has been swayed by Trump and the others, Hannity, the rest of them. But this division, I don't know anything to compare it with, because after 9/11, this country, you could feel in the streets of New York, we were united. We saw a common enemy and we faced it down as a country. And I think we're still capable of doing that if we had leaders. This Trump guy is bad news for the country. I hold him personally responsible. It sort of reminds me of when I was 8 or 9 years old, my brother would root for the Yankees. So being the number 2 brother and the Maverick, I had to root for Cleveland. Okay? But it's this idiotic sort of, if there's science that says something, that Trump, being the idiot, comes out, or pretending to be an idiot, he's not an idiot, spreads the word. It's okay not to say it's true. But, as Pat Moynihan, the great senator from New York, once said, you're entitled to your own views and your own opinions, but not to your own facts. The facts are there. Fauci's right. Rand Paul is wrong. I love the fact he pointed in the face and said, you're the one lying here. I mean, it's about time we got it down to brass tacks. It's bad news. But, so much of this goes back to the bigger problem in the world you and I are in, which is concerned about democracy. And I got to tell you, I went through my life writing this book about my life. And what I came through, the heroic moments that really got to me emotionally, was when I found people fighting for democracy, whether it was at the Berlin Wall in 1989, or it was in South Africa when apartheid went down, or it was in Northern Ireland when they ended the troubles and the killing of Protestant and Catholic, and they agreed to decide the future of Northern Ireland on democracy by an election. They agreed to rule South Africa, not by whites, but by election, by majority rule. And the people at the Berlin Wall, they didn't say, I'm against socialism, I'm for capitalism. The people I talked to said, we want to be able to decide. We just want to have elections. And that's what Trump's really lied about. What he's really, the great fact he will not bring truth to is he lost, just like he won in 2016. He won. It's hard for a lot of Democrats to accept that, but he did win a narrow election thanks to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Same deal happened thanks to because of Arizona and the other states in 20. The truth is he lost. He lied about that. He's not been helpful in getting the truth out. If he would just change right now tonight and call a press conference or put out something and said, I believe we've got to get masks on. We got to get masks on again probably now because we've been lying. But we certainly have to get the vaccinations. He could really be, almost like a USO celebrity going around the country. He could be the Bob Hope of vaccinations if he wanted to. But he doesn't want to do it. And that's the hell he's created. He wants chaos. He doesn't want to be a good person, even when it's so clear that we're going back into the troubled area we were in last year. We're going back without some real leadership right now. And that's going to take some leadership on the right. We've got good leadership on the center left from Biden and from the left. We're not getting any, and some center right even, but we're not getting anything from the right. And we need him to do it. If I could pray for him to do it, I'd do it. I don't think he's going to do it. The right thing.
Well, you talk about that and that patriotism, and it comes up in the book as you go through different parts of your life experience, including public service and then being around public service. And part of that patriotism, properly understood, is that it puts the hope of democracy far above the reality of daily politics. Something that Trump and his followers have been able to do is get everyone's frustration with politics and make that the whole thing. There's not even that greater appeal. I mean, do you see anyone on the right, in your view, that is able to withstand this? Because, McConnell said it was an insurrection for a day and then went back along with MAGA and everything else.
Well, everybody on the right's not always wrong. I mean, that's obviously true. I mean, Nikki Haley brought the flag down in South Carolina. I said that was a wonderful moment to take down the Confederate battle flag. It had to happen. She did it at the right time. She did it with gusto. And people like Lindsey Graham followed her lead. She was a leader. It's possible that somebody on the right can do something right. We've got people like the governors in northeastern United States who are doing the right thing, Baker and the others. And I think they're quite capable of taking leadership. But there's one guy that has to do it, a person, and that's Donald Trump. Because he can tell that other network, Fox, what to say. Because when he came out loud and clear for getting our vaccinations, I think the others like Hannity and the rest of them, Laura Ingraham, those people would go along with him. He's the leader of the pack. And I'd like to see him do it. I wish the left, everyone would say, okay, we're going to give you a little breakdown. You still have a chance to do something right here. You can still do this. This one thing. You get out there on television, whatever media is available to you, and say the right thing. Please, we can't have 35% of the country unvaccinated. We can live with maybe 15%. Get it down to half. He could do that. He couldn't get all the crazies, but I bet he could get half the crazies because he's responsible for them doing this. Yeah. He said, big tycoon in New York with all the money in the big building, he says to them, I'm smart as anybody. I went to Penn. I went to Wharton. I'm smart. Listen to me. And he didn't come through and tell the truth. He didn't. Anyway, thanks for talking about the book. I really believe in democracy. I know you do. I wish everybody in America.
I got my last question for you. This is my last question because I've been going through the book. We have some of the photos here. So many MSNBC viewers know you and cherish you. I know that because people still come up to ask about you. And on behalf of all of them, I'll say, hey, they want to know how you're doing. You're doing great. But what were the roles or the jobs or the moments for you now that you've put it all together here? You've had time to reflect. It's in the book. What's the job you're most proud of? Was it police officer? Was it candidate? Was it journalist? That's my final question.
Well, I guess it was at the Berlin Wall when I was able to go over. I didn't even wait for my editor to send me. I was with the newspapers in those days, San Francisco Examiner. I just went. I said, they're gonna accept the fact that the wall's coming down. I'm going. And I'm standing at the wall on drizzly night. It was a Wednesday night in November of 1989, and the wall's just starting to open up. And there's some young people standing at the Brandenburg Gate, the great divide between East and West. And I talked to a young guy who looked like he's from Berkeley in the 1960s, the free speech movement. He had, the uniform I used to wear. It was the Army surplus jacket, long hair. And I said, was ist Freiheit? What's freedom mean to you? And he said, talking to you. And what he meant was, not me, Chris Matthews, but talking openly about politics in a country that has never allowed people to have free expression, at least not when the wall went up. And he meant to do what we do every night, or I did every night, you still do, talking honestly about what our feelings and our concerns and our worries about our country, the honesty that comes from the First Amendment, I guess. And he was saying this is the first time. A young nurse was standing next to him and said, at that moment, we couldn't talk like this 3 weeks ago. And so freedom is precious. Right. We've got it. We got to use it. And I worry about a guy like Trump, who's basically a cult leader, denying the truth of the election of 2020 and being willing, apparently, to keep lying about it. And lying about basically its indifference. Because he's been vaccinated, damn it. He's been vaccinated, and all these other people have. They've been lying about the importance of that.
A lot of them.
They're not saying,
Yeah, and Tucker and a lot of the guys over there, they've got their vaccinations. They got the rules. The rules are good enough for them to keep them safe while other people suffer. Chris, it's great to see you again. I love what you said in closing. Freedom, like health and life itself. Boy, you cherish it if you were worried about losing it.
We're lucky.
Our thanks to Chris Matthews. The book here, the book on the screen, This Country, My Life in Politics and History. Get it wherever you get your books.